Now let's have a look at the advanced section of the sampling tool. So if we navigate to the audit toolbar and the sampling tool, when we've opened the sampling tool, we'll see that above is the range detector, which we've dealt with. And then below that is all of the sampling methodologies that are available, which we've covered, right? And lastly, we then have the advanced section, right? So let us say in this instance, we would like to do a random sample of 5 items again, and we move into the advanced section. Firstly, what we are then asked is to select the transaction values. So in other words, the column with our transaction values, because the way the advanced section works is that it allows us to either select all of our material items and then over and above that, run the sampling methodology that we would like to apply, right? Or to exclude certain values from our sampling population before running our sampling methodology that we select, right? So the very first one we have a look at, the very first thing we need to give it is the transaction values column. Again, it's been selected correctly, and if it isn't, drop down is right there and you can select the new column. Now, I will say in this case that we do want to include material values, and we will continue to use the materiality of 1,300 as our example, right? So at this point, I can go and press continue. And what we will see is that it will tell us TL has selected random sampling with a sample size of 5 with materiality of 1,300 and no excluded values. So if you recall in our materials only sampling video, the total value of all the material items was 10,852. And if we have a look at all the items from this point onwards, because that is the point where everything below that is below our materiality of 1,300, we will then see, if I highlight all those items, we will then see that my material items are the same as the material only. So now what the audit toolbar has done is it has pulled in the material, all the material items first. And then over and above that, it has gone and selected a sample of 5 random items from the remaining population. So the population that does not include these items that have already been selected as our material items. So that means that you will never have a material item lying within your random sample over here if you do this. So that's the first item, right? So if we then move over to our sampling tool again, and we will again go with random samples, a sample size of 5, right? But in this case, let's say we wanted to only run this on our negative values. In other words, I wanted to run a sample on my credit values only, right? If that was the case, we would then come here to the exclude, right? And if we read what it says filter the initial data set using one of the below exclusion rules applied on the column of transactions, right? So we can then tell it in my totals column, I want you to only look at to only look at the positive the positive values, right? By excluding the negative values. So, so that is how we would then run the materiality item. So the next one we then have, if we navigate to the sampling tool. And again, we select a sample size of 5, right? The case was that we wanted to run our sample only on the credit values, right? What we can then do is we can move over here to the exclude function where we see that it tells us that it will filter the initial data set using one of the below exclusion rules, right? And it will apply that on the column of transactions that we've selected. And again, that column is over here, pre-selected by the order toolbar correctly. If it wasn't, drop down, but we are happy with that. And now we're saying we want to exclude all of the positive values so that we're only running it on the negative items. So I'm going to exclude positive items over here, right? And I'm going to press continue. What that will do is it will give me a sample of only 2 items. The reason for that is that we only have 2 items that are available for the sampling tool to select from. And therefore, when we exclude all of the positive items, there are only 2 items for it to select, so it will give us those 2. Let's do the same thing, but this time excluding our negative items, right? So I want a random sample. Again, I'm going to tell it a random sample of 5, but I want to exclude negative items. In this case, it will run and it will give us 5 items that are positive without an issue, because when we remove those 2 items that are negative from our population, there is still a lot of items that the random sampling can select from. Perfect. The next one we'll have a look at, right, is the exclusion of an amount, so less than a specific amount, right? So what that then means is that if I go in here and I tell it, I don't want you to sample anything less than 1,000, right? And I want to include my material items, and all of my material items are going to be 1,300, right? The random sample of 5 items that we have over here will be performed on the items that are in between 1,300, so less than 1,300, but higher than, so more than 1,000. And that then allows us to more finicky, like more to work with our data set a lot more, and to apply a lot more filters onto it before we start sampling. Another thing we can do in this case, right, is if I wanted to say I wanted to get a sample of all of my material items, so we know that we have 10 material items in total. If I wanted to get a sample of 5 of those 10 items, I can again go into here, tell it to exclude everything that is less than 1,300, meaning that we only have 10 items for it to select from, and my selection will be one of those 10 items. Perfect. And that is how the entirety of the sampling tool functions. Now, if you have anything, any questions or anything like that, please post them along down below in the comments section and the feedback section, and we will then, get to that as soon as possible, and respond to that comment and let you know what might be the answer to that question. Perfect.